So for the sake of time, we're going to just go ahead and jump right in. So welcome to Developing Career Pathways and Academies for Opportunity Youth. On your end, it probably says at risk, but we're using the term opportunity, and we'll explain that moving forward. Let's go ahead and introduce ourselves so that you know who's going to be speaking and interacting with you all. So my name is Caroline Ouya, and I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Access. I have been with the organization now for 4.5 years, and so I've learned so much and have been able to help expand upon these career pathways. So excited to be with you today.
Good morning, all. My name is Rashawn Brady, and as it says, I am the Senior Vice President, and I've been here approximately 16 years, and it's been my ultimate pleasure to work with these two that are on the panel with me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mayra Contreras, and I am the WIO Case Manager Supervisor. I've been with Access for 5 years.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and go over the agenda so that you guys know what to expect. We're going to give a brief overview of the nonprofit agency that we're a part of, Access Youth and Immigration Services. And then we're going to give an overview of all the career pathways that we offer here so that you get a glimpse of what our range is. And then we're going to get more specific and talk about the process of creating career pathways and some of the best practices that we use to make them happen. And then we'll have some time for any questions and opportunity to kind of interact and dialogue with you all. So without further ado, who is Access? So Access Youth and Immigration Services have been in San Diego for about 53 years now. Our headquarters are located in Linda Vista. However, we serve the whole county of San Diego. And we do so based on 3 primary programs. A Violence Against Women Act, Save Legal Network program that offers legal services for victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking. And we have a specialty working with immigrant survivors. We also have a micro enterprise program. So we support low-income families and individuals in the city of San Diego start and expand small businesses. And then our last program is our Youth Workforce Development Program. So we help young adults in the county of San Diego with education, career, and workforce development under a grant called the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act. And so all that you're going to be hearing today about the career pathways are based under that particular program. So Myra is going to now explain to you who our youth are, what makes them an opportunity youth, and why are they the community that we serve.
Thank you, Caroline. So Caroline mentioned that we are a county-wide program. We offer services in the North Metro, South, and East region of San Diego. We assist out-of-school youth who are currently within the ages of 16 through 24 from diverse backgrounds. That could include out-of-school youth, meaning that they're currently not attending any school. They could also be high school dropouts, low income, basic deficient, English language learner, juvenile or adult justice involved, as well as homeless and runaways. We also assist foster care or students that have been aged out of the foster care system. And we also help parent and pregnant teen, as well as individuals with disabilities.
Awesome. So overall, they're youth that have many barriers to equal education and employment. So we're working very hard to make it more accessible to that community. So now Rashawn is going to give you an overview of all of our career pathways.
So you guys can, as you are reading the screen and I'm kind of narrating it, I just want you guys to visualize the before times when we had people all together, you know, a big room just full of people just baiting, just ready to learn, right? So we have the customer service and hospitality, which we here in San Diego know it's very, very big. I mean, we are a very, very hospitality friendly town. And so that's why this one was one that is kind of the entry level to every job is customer service and hospitality. So we're very proud of that one. The Law and the Law Enforcement Career Academy, that one, we're going to talk a lot more about these academies a little further as we go in, but that one is paramount, especially in the times that we are now, because we need to have an equal balance of knowledge of law and law enforcement. And we also want to encourage those who still want to be in that field to be in that field. Small business, which we know is the backbone of our country, young entrepreneurs. We have a lot of young people that are, they say, hey, I don't want to work for anybody. I want to be able to do my own thing. Well, we have a platform for that to be able to happen. The STEM and the robotics. The STEM and the robotics classes that we have, what we're trying to do is to be able to have people that will come in and teach our young people how to live in the STEM world, to be in the STEM world. What we do know is that 70% of the people that are in that STEM are underrepresented, right? Like we need to get more people of color and more women in the STEM field. And the mental health career pathway, which simply means two things. We want people to be interested in that career, but we also want people to take advantage of the fact that their mental health is important to us as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Rashawn. So as we continue with the rest of our presentation, if you have any questions, go ahead and put them into the chat box or submit them, and we'll do our best to answer them as we go along. And as we mentioned, there's also going to be some time at the end of the presentation to talk further. We've worked to try to give you as many examples as possible, and know that these are our best practices, but you can edit and maneuver them however you would like for your community. So let's go ahead and talk about the process of creating career pathway goals. So there are three basic criteria that we use when we're considering, what's going to be the overall goals of these pathways. The first is exposure to the career fields and industry best practices. So a lot of our youth have only heard of being a doctor or being a lawyer or whatever it is that is, in their community. So there's a lot of careers that they have not been exposed to, or they have no idea all the different elements that are involved. So our primary focus is to provide clear, concise, but yet a diverse overview of the career fields that we've mentioned. And so we do that in many different ways that we'll talk about it. Our next is work readiness, which is also equally as important. We want to make sure that our youth are walking away with work readiness skills, those soft skills that are needed to be able to work well on the job. And so we don't only teach them via workshops, but we try our best to embed work readiness practical skills within the design of our program. And so we'll talk a little bit more about how we embed that into the pathway. And then our last overall goal is community resource building. So as you all know, San Diego has so many resources that are available, but we struggle with figuring out how do we actually get these resources to the communities that are in need of them. And so we have utilized these pathways to expose our youth to all the community resources that are there that can help address any barriers that they have to employment, education, and self-sufficiency. So those are the three criteria that we use when we're considering what makes an effective pathway. So we want to go ahead and give you some examples of the goals that we've been able to create. So I'm going to talk about the mental health one. Rashawn is going to talk a little bit about the law career pathway. And then we also have our overall goals for our small business, just so that you can see the language and the energy that we're going into creating our pathways with. So for the mental health career pathway, our overall goals was to expose young adults, especially underrepresented groups, to the mental health career field. We wanted to reduce mental health stigma within the San Diego community. We wanted to build awareness about mental health issues in the community, and then build capacity among young adults to address and support mental wellness. So as you can see, even though our overall goal is career and work readiness, we also know that there's so many other things that need to be addressed in order to be career ready. And so we try our best to bring those two elements together when we're creating a pathway.
The thing that is going to be important for everybody on the call to understand is that when you build these kind of programs and you want to be able to put them out into the community for your clientele, you have to have a reason why, kind of like what Caroline is just explaining. And then we have to be able to not only, sell that to us who are on the screen who believe in it, but to all of the workers that are with us that understand that they're the ones that are going to have to go out and tell their clients, hey, we have this opportunity for you, and they're going to have to be able to explain why is it going to be important. So this is why it's important to put out the goals of the program. And as you can see with the law career pathway, exactly what it is: to expose the young adults and unrepresented groups to law enforcement. And like I said in the beginning, that absolutely goes two ways, right? There's the way that is going to be the career that you might want to choose. And there are so many. A lot of times when we talk to our young people, they only think about one or two things. Like if we say medical field, you think about doctor, nurse. If you think about law career, you think about lawyer, police. But there are so many different avenues that you can go down. And so it's important when you build these pathway programs that you're going to expose everybody to everything possible that they can do. Everything from security, private security guards, to absolutely what we're talking about, which is the law enforcement piece, which is the police, the border patrol, and things of that nature, and lawyers and attorneys and paralegals. So everything that we try to do to run the gamut of, here's what you can do. Here are the tangible steps that you can take to get there.
Caroline, you're on mute.
I am no longer on mute. Hello, everyone. So thank you, Rashawn, for that overview. And essentially what Rashawn is mentioning is that we want to ignite a light bulb. We want to ignite a light bulb and then use that excitement that's come from these pathways to then develop into the actual career development piece. So let's go ahead and talk about the pathway timeline and structure. So as we mentioned in the beginning, we try not to just train and give a training on how to complete an application. We want our youth to actually practice what is it to do an application or to interview. So in order for our participants to be a part of any of the pathways we've mentioned, they have to complete an application and they have to interview. Now, this is not because we're saying, oh, we're selecting and we're throwing, people out and saying, oh, you don't deserve, or you're not ready for this particular pathway. It's so that we can give them that opportunity at the beginning to determine where they're at in that work readiness step. So participants work on filling it out. They get support from their case managers if they need that. And what's beneficial about that process is, as staff and coordinators of the pathway, we're able to see where our youth are in the work readiness process. So then we know, hey, we need to beef up our, or strengthen our interview trainings because our youth are struggling a little bit with these particular questions on the interview. Or these questions on the application, they're showing challenges answering them. So maybe that's what our focus needs to be. So by embedding it into our pathway structure, we're gaining more information that informs what type of work readiness support we have to offer them throughout the program. The next piece is our orientation. And orientation is very important, just like the application and interview part. We want to give all of our participants a clear understanding of all program expectations. So this is when you go over the rules of you have to show up consistently. If you don't show up, these are the consequences. These are the different topics you're going to explore. These are the people that are coming in to speak with you. And we try to be as transparent as possible about that so that we're, building up that excitement about what they're going to experience. This orientation is also when we do any of the assessments that we need to do for the pathway. So any pre-tests, which we'll talk about shortly, any other types of assessments that we need to find out where they are, or how to evaluate the program. We do all of that at orientation, so that it's all done within one cohort. I know a lot of us, we struggle with chasing after paperwork, sending it out and saying, okay, bring it back to us. And so by structuring everything within orientation, we were able to eliminate that challenge of getting things back on a timely manner. Let's go ahead and talk about duration, Rashawn.
Absolutely. And then I'll kind of put a cap on the orientation, because what's important when you create a program, and we as the organizers, and in our case, because we're working with young adults, I'll just say kind of the adults of the program, we know that if you don't know what you're getting into, you'll have a lot of people that will join and they'll say, well, I didn't know this, I didn't know that. And so the orientation absolutely takes care of that. And it is something that prepares people for, it prepares our young people for what the world beyond our programs are. Right. And that kind of goes into the duration. What you'll see on the screen is 5 weeks. We have programs that are 9 weeks. We have programs that are 2 weeks. We have programs that are 2 days. What we try to do is be thoughtful in the process of what it's going to take to be able to learn what we're putting out, what makes sense. And we want to be realistic to what the world is, right? Because there's not a program that you can get. None of us that are in this room have ever gotten a degree in 2 days. And a lot of times what we try to do with programs is, we want to appease all of the giants, and we want to be able to microwave things for our participants to be able to get there, but that's not how the reality of it is. So the duration has got to be, it has to match what the training is, and then what is absolutely going to be past that. You cannot be a law enforcement officer in 2 days, right? So there's a process, and we want to be able to teach that. And we also want to be able to teach that when we talk about how long you're going to be there, right? So if you only could show up for 15 minutes and earn something, people would do that, right? Because it's the old saying, if it was easy, everybody would do it. So we'd like to put a little bit of a challenge in front of there, but not something that's so insurmountable that a person can't do it, but that they understand that once you get past this program and you really want to venture into these careers, you're going to have to make a commitment. And so everything we're doing is leading towards that piece that's saying, this is how this is here, because this is how this is out there.
Right. And we found, even though we have pathways that are different time lengths based on what the subject is, we found over the years that what works really well is that 5 week, about a month or so, that 5 week timeline, so that, it's enough for them to follow up and show retention, and meet the overall goals of the program, whether it's a certification, but it's not too long that they lose interest and they're not moving on to the next step of the process. And so the pathways that we're going to show you examples of, they're usually 5 weeks. Our participants are meeting twice a week. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are very popular. And the times, just so that you see what our practice is when we were live, it was from 10 to 3:30 at our main site. And virtual, we've been able to condense our learning to about 5:30 to 8 p.m. live classes, and then followed with this asynchronous work. So work that they can do at home. And then from there, we have graduation and follow-up. So Myra is going to talk to you about that.
Yes, so upon completion of the career pathway, it is very, very important that we celebrate everyone. We want to make sure that we highlight all the milestones, all the accomplishments that they have accomplished throughout the training. Once we're done with the program, we also want to make sure that we continue to do case management support. We want to offer as many opportunities as we can, which could include a paid internship, even if it's helping them with employment. It could also be work readiness, post-secondary education. Our goal is to make sure that we connect them to the next step, which could be educational, employment, or even if they want to continue with another occupational training.
One of the things that's also very, very important with the graduation and the follow-up is you all saw what our demographic is. You saw who we work with. We've had young people that have come in that have been 18 years old and participated in these programs, and we do this graduation, and that's the first celebratory thing that they have done with a accomplishment that has anything to do with education, right? Like a lot of people have, played football or sports and they've had those things, but this is one where they've actually had to sit down, learn, and somebody celebrate that. And please don't underestimate how important that is for people to be able to have those milestones and celebrate them, right? So as you're creating your pathways, take time to celebrate the many victories that happen along the way.
Thank you. So here is a snapshot of two of our pathways and how we structured the 5 weeks. And so if you look at the top, it's the mental health career pathway. And we broke down the 5 weeks based on topics that are important to our population, to our youth, challenges that they've shared that they've had with case managers, challenges that are, known within this demographic. And so the first week, mental health first aid and suicide prevention. And we'll talk about the partners of how we actually bring the learning to them in a bit. Then the second week, we focus on resilience and trauma-informed care. Week 4, we focus on substance abuse prevention and CPR first aid. And then week 5, it's healthy relationships and self-care. And so within those topics, we're bringing in experts to teach them about what those topics mean and then what careers are associated with supporting, those topics within the community. And then when you look down at our law enforcement training, if you look at the bottom, this is how we broke down the weeks. So, mental health and law. And so we talked about PERT, anti-bullying, cyberbullying, suicide intervention prevention, healthy relationships in the criminal justice system. So what careers focus on domestic violence, human trafficking, child abuse? We talked about substance abuse prevention and CPR first aid. So everything from the DEA, gang and narcotics, things of that nature. And then we ended it with advocacy and work readiness. So this is when we go into, grant writing or what it's like to be a lawyer and advocate for different clients. And so based on these topics, they're able to attach a more personal element to their career goals because they're learning about topics that are important to them or they've experienced, and want to kind of learn a little bit more on how they can be a part of the solution for their community.
And one of the key things that Caroline said to you, and what you really have to kind of take into account is you have to listen to what your clientele is saying, right? So all of these pathways, they all started out with a very kind of a generic sense, right? So unfortunately or unfortunately, right, way back in the day, we had a tester subjects that went through, so to speak, right? We had somebody had to be the first. Now it's always been a comprehensive program, but when you're building these things, you cannot be afraid to learn as you're going. Right, listen to what the people are saying. Another thing that's very important here, and we're gonna, kind of further talk about this too, is partnerships. You'll see on these agendas that we don't do this alone, right? We have to be able to involve other people in there. No agency is an island. That's going to be one of the first mistakes, that if you try to build this and just think, well, we've got everything, and your program might be so comprehensive that you absolutely do, but when you really take a step back and look at it, you're involving different sections of your organization, just like we involve different sections of the community. The other thing that you're going to look at when you see this agenda is, let's take the law enforcement. It's just not, here's how you go to the police academy, here's how you pass the police fitness test, right? There's a bunch of different things that you look at and different aspects of it. Law, right? The law portion of it, domestic violence, what that means on both sides. Because when you're in law enforcement, you're going to see that from both sides. When you're a lawyer, you're going to see that from both sides. One of the important things to do, especially with these two topics, is to make sure that you are prepared for people to be activated by some of these things. Uh, the reason why, when we've talked to young people, they want to be in mental health or they want to be in law enforcement is usually based on something good but most of the time something bad that has happened to them. So these can be activators. A lot of people know those as triggers, things that can set them off. So you have to be ready to deal with any kind of an onslaught of those things that may happen. And again, your agency may be very prepared to do that internally, but if you need to, it's going to be a good idea to have outside people to come to be able to say, well, hey, Johnny, we understand that that happened. We have somebody that you can talk to, because this is the reason why a great percentage of the young people or people in general stop doing things, right? They start these programs and they stop because something gets activated in them and they don't know where to put that. And what we try to do is to eliminate all of that so people can get a fresh view of where their circumstances are and what their career goals want to be and how they can understand it.
So Rashawn is very right that we do not do this alone. So we can't cover, I mean, we could, the three of us or our team could be the
I
ones
feel good.
them. But the truth is that there are so many great partners in the community who already have best practices, certifications, trainings, and knowledge that they want to offer to this community and to this group. So what we did is identify who are those people, what do they offer, and how can we plug and chug them into a schedule that would provide our youth with more understanding about that particular topic and career field, and also just knowledge in general and resources on how to address any of those challenges that may happen to them or their family or their communities. So that's where the resource building meets career exposure comes in. So the way that we've identified who these partners are, and the best way to do this is through our community collaboratives. So aligning our pathway goals with the overall collaborative goals. And we'll give you an example of how we did that with our Live Well leadership team to create the mental health career pathway. So once we've aligned and found that we have similar goals, we use those connections in order to enhance our training delivery. So that means identifying who can come in and be a guest speaker, who can host a field trip so that they're seeing behind the scenes of something, who can provide a resource or information about what it took to get to that particular career field. And so that's been very, very helpful for us. We've also utilized community trainings. So if you saw in the previous PowerPoint, there were some certifications that we listed, QPR suicide intervention, mental health first aid, art of communication with the National Conflict Resolution Center. These are all trainings and certificates that are available to our community for free from other service-based agencies. And so we took advantage of that and we used that as something that would enhance the capacity of our youth. Because they went from having, none of those certifications or certificates or knowledge to now saying that they've had some understanding from it from a credible, source in the community. So we've embedded a lot of community trainings into our design to help booster our youth's resume and understanding of the different topics. And then from there, we have certifications. So Myra, can you talk a little bit about our Guard card?
Yes. Caroline and Rashawn did mention our law enforcement career pathway. I do want to elaborate more on the type of certification that comes with the Guard card training. So in the County of San Diego, we partner with Citywide Protection Services, and they offer the opportunity of providing a phase 1, 2, and 3 Guard card training, which leads to an 8-hour initial power to arrest certificate. And that enables participants to get their security guard license. Once they get the license, our goal is to continue assisting students or participants with job placement. It could also be internship opportunities, or that could also lead to post-secondary education. If students are very interested in that career field, our goal is to continue assisting them, whether it's through college tours, connecting them through the different resources in the community. Our goal is to make sure that they find employment out there.
And we embed our certifications, our entry-level certification. So they're getting certificates along the 5 weeks, but we embed our certifications at the end of the program, right before graduation. And we do that strategically because it allows them to get an overview of everything first, and then sort of earn the actual certification, right? So if they're not showing up, if they're not going on the field trips and asking the questions, and then expect to just show up and get the certification, then we have a concern about that, because then is that going to, are they going to retain, that learning and actually follow through with it, and build upon it. So we make sure that our major certifications are at the end, right before they finish with the program, and graduate. And then from there, we also embed some post-secondary education. So we have a lot of educational partners. And so we, have scheduled campus tours and Q&A sessions and meet and greets. So an example for this with the law career pathway that we've been talking about is that we partnered with Cal Western School of Law, which one of our legal directors, Ann Bautista, is an alum. And we were able to do a tour of Cal Western School of Law. We were able to meet with admissions. All of our youth meet with admissions to see what does it take to get through that process. And then they got to participate in a mock trial with actual students. So by the time they're done, they have, it's more than just here's the application process. It's here is what it would look like for you to be in this environment, right? And here is a warm handoff. We can vouch for it because they're an actual partner. And that ends up, prolonging their desire to actually pursue that career field. So this is just an example of aligning our goals with the goals of a partner or a collaborative. So Access is a part of the Live Well, San Diego network, and we sit on the North Central Behavioral Health Work Group. And so it was through a discussion in that work group that this mental health career pathway came to life. So the work group had determined that their 3 goals was to decrease stigma and increase awareness of mental health issues in the community. They also wanted to increase awareness and perception of harm, especially when it comes to alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, and then increase access to coordinated skill-based training. And so we were able to align with those goals and have them be a formal partner in carrying out these, carrying out this pathway. So this just shows you how to leverage the relationships. And so within that collaborative, we were able to determine, and I'll go back to that last slide, we were able to find partners like, the Mental Health America, or HIDA, high intensity drug trafficking area, or the Say San Diego, drug and alcohol advocacy unit, and use their expertise to bring knowledge and career opportunities to our participants. So here is an example of a career pathway day. We just wanted to kind of show you what it looks like. So this is from our law career pathway. And if you see the day that we focused on mental health in the justice system, our day was from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And so we were able to partner with the San Diego District Attorney's Office to talk about, their juvenile justice court and their behavioral health court and what's involved in that community. We were also able to learn about anti-bullying and cyberbullying, and then, partner with our Suicide Prevention Council to then talk about suicide intervention and QPR and our PERT. So by the time they were leaving, they had an overview of all of these different components that are all focused on addressing mental health in the justice system. And they were able to see the different possibilities of where they can be and also walk away with a certificate, which was the QPR training. The same is with the substance abuse and prevention. And so we partnered with Say San Diego's alcohol and drug, advocacy program, and they have a strong relationship with the DEA. And so we were able to bring in DEA agents to speak with our youth and talk to them about what it's like to be an agent, what it's like to, be a part of addressing, the opioid crisis. But we also wanted them to know about what the impact of these these drugs are on their brain based on our shared goals with the Behavioral Health Task Force. So we had amazing dialogue about the effect of marijuana and vaping and all of those sorts of drugs on the brain and development. And so this is how we structure our day, where it's a little bit of, learning and just processing in general, and then the career development piece embedded.
One of the things to remember as you're developing your pathways, and that we're talking about the law one in particular, we have a lot of the young people that are in our program that have had adverse relationships with law enforcement. So it was literally like pulling teeth to get them to come in and sit and to listen. So the thing that has to happen before you start doing these pathways is that you really have to think that through, and you really have to develop a relationship with your clientele so that they not only do they trust you and they know that, hey, we're not bringing in law enforcement because this is one of those tricks, right? Because you have warrants and we're gonna take you away. No, this is something that's educational, and it goes both ways because Caroline did a fantastic job with harboring the relationship with the district attorney, with the officers that actually came in, and with all of these people, so that they would know, hey, look, this is a non-judgmental. There may be a participant or two that asks you a question that's uncomfortable, right? So we had to be prepared for uncomfortable moments. And in the end, it's kind of like what Myra talked about earlier with the graduation. It makes it so much sweeter to be able to get through that, because it's an awakening that happens, right? And that the same thing can happen with customer service, the same thing that can happen with mental health. But in this particular one, it's so big because there are these adverse relationships that all of a sudden come to a head. We actually had an officer that came in that one of our young people recognized, right, from working in his neighborhood. And that could be traumatic if you don't do kind of the pre-work, and are not prepared for that. So whenever you're creating these pathways, you don't want to just think about all the negative things that can happen. Obviously, right now we're kind of giving you the it's going to be great, it's going to be great, but this is work. Don't get it messed up. This is work, and you have to be able to be prepared, and you have to be able to be committed, and you have to be able to be prepared again for uncomfortable situations to happen.
Right. And another thing to mention, because the question is where is the next step or the career development piece? A lot of the organizations or entities that we partnered with have been looking for volunteers and young people to be a part of informing the work that they do. For example, HIDA, that's responsible for the border issues, they offered volunteer and on the job trainings for the youth that were in the pathway. And so those that were important, the youth that were interested in that particular topic now have a direct in to learning more about that particular position, whether it's via volunteer or whether it's via an internship position. And that's building upon their resume and giving them experiences that they might not have had access to prior. So when you're looking for these partners, that's a question to ask them. Do you have opportunities for our youth to volunteer with you, to job shadow with you, or to be an intern? And if so, what would that look like? So by the time we're introducing them to our youth, we're offering that to them as a next step in the process of pursuing that particular career. So we just want to take a minute to thank all of our partners. So this is not a comprehensive list, but we've used all of these partners in our law career pathway, mental health career pathway, small business pathway. And so this just lets you know that once you've established a relationship with them, you can use them, use those relationships over and over again in your pathway design. So for example, suicide intervention, I think that we believe that that's valuable for just about any career that's related with working with people, right? Or, some of our youth want to go into childcare or things like that. Like that's a good skill to have. Mental health first aid, especially with everything that's going on right now. We're grateful that we can say we have so many youth out there that are now certified, in mental health first aid, right? So these are all skill sets that, we don't often see them as career development opportunities, but we need to start shifting our perspective to understand that they can also be and are career development opportunities. So let's talk about program evaluation. Rashawn, could you go ahead and start us off with that?
Absolutely. A lot of the things that we've been talking about so far are uh, oriented towards how we're going to help our clients get where they want to be. But there's also things that we have to do internally because we know we have to keep our own lights on, right? And there's going to be determinant factors on whether something was a success or whether, it needs to have work. And data is a big part of that. So what we suggest that you do is set up a system of not only collecting the demographics of who's in your program, but how they did, right? Like how did they start and how did they end and what part did you play in that, right? So the pre and post tests, sometimes we call them tests, we call them assessments, however you want to word that to get rid of the anxiety, is that you get a comprehensive questions that have to do with what you're going to instruct as in its entirety in that day or however it's going to go, and you basically get the same questions that you start with and you get it to the end, and when it ends, and the idea is that they're supposed to know more, right? And so that pre-assessment is not only for them but it's for you, and you really have to pay attention to that because that's where you're going to do your internal growth. And a lot of times that's where your funders are going to want to see, well, we helped you fund this, how did it progress, how are you going to show me that this worked? A couple of the other things that we use that are more focused towards our client is the ACEs survey, which is the adverse childhood experiences. We know coming into this that there's going to be a lot of activators, in other words, triggers that are going to happen, right? So if we kind of know ahead of time where people are, we can best suit, okay, this day we're having this, we need to know that this is going to be available. And the Beck's hopelessness scale is something that's great because it really just looks at who's in the room, right? Like what is their view, their social, social, where are they built from? Like what are we really doing with them? Are we increasing their input and to make it a better output for them? And so whatever tools you use to evaluate, keep them consistent and and don't overcomplicate it to where it is you don't even understand what it means in the end, but you're going to have to not only understand it to best case manage that person, but to be able to collect that data to send to your funders or just to have to your records to understand who you're working with, how you best do that, and what's going to be great for your company's future.
And these assessments, the Beck's Hopelessness Scale, Quality of Life Inventory, ACEs, are all, evidence-based. So those are the go-tos that are evidence-based. They're simple enough that our youth don't feel inundated with paperwork. And then the other thing is, for example, with the ACEs survey, instead of just giving the survey and saying, thank you for filling it out, we then teach them, what did that mean? What do those things mean? And how does that apply to you? So when you're doing assessments, do your best to be as informative and educative as possible, not just gathering information from them for the sake of gathering. And then for the perceptions of the career field assessment, we do that one pre and post. And so we try to see, what has been the increase in what they've learned about that career field over time. And then with the work readiness, that's embedded into our interviewing. So that's when we know where they're at based on interviewing them and receiving feedback from them. So let's talk about follow-up. So they've graduated. What happens next? So Myra's going to walk you through that.
Thank you, Caroline. So our next step that we consider is our paid internship program. Through our internship, students are eligible for 150 hours of hands-on experience. Through that hands-on experience, they could either be gaining work experience that they do not have at all, or sometimes students come into our program where they have a current job, but they're aiming to switch that career. So those are two different options that we offer the paid internship. Something that Caroline shared earlier was the community partners. So I also recommend reaching out to your community partners because a lot of the times they're able to help you with trainings and career pathways, but they could also be a good resource for an internship placement as well as job shadowing.
And I'd like to share a success story. So we, two of them. So we have a youth that went through our mental health career pathway, did not have any work experience at all when they started, but they made it through the 5 weeks. They got their certificate in QPR, mental health first aid, the art of communication with the National Conflict Resolution Center. And so they were looking for a job, and we had a partner, the Child Care Career Center. So just by participating in the pathway and having those certificates of learning or exploring those particular topics, he was able to get hired with childcare careers, even though he did not have any other experience prior to that. So this knowledge and offering these opportunities definitely makes a difference. We also offer supportive services. So this is how we help support our youth so that they make it through the actual pathway. So Myra is going to talk about that.
So part of our supportive services, one of the steps that we do is we help the student develop an ISS plan, which is basically highlighting their educational, employment, and also occupational goals. We use our supportive service funding to help remove some of those barriers that are not allowing them to take the next step. So we use that funding to basically assist with public transportation. It could be any occupational certifications that they need assistance with, as well as professional interviewing, clothing. This funding could also be used for any educational related expenses, as well as any employment tools that they might need. Supportive services are also available throughout the FollowUp services, which is phase 2 of our program. Our goal with supportive services is just helping them remove any type of barrier that they have towards reaching their goals.
And so in person, food was very important because they were with us throughout the day. And so just making sure that we had lunch and snacks available, it was critical. So that's one thing to just keep in mind, that if to address that and figure out partners that can, help donate food and things of that nature. All right. So we've reached the end of sort of the structure and overview. We now want to answer any questions. So if there's specific challenges that you're having in developing a pathway or something that doesn't make quite sense, this is our chance to kind of support you based on what we've learned from this pathway. The first question I see we have, will we be providing contact information? I'm going to go ahead and put our contact information into the chat box, and then it should also be found under this session. So we'll put the slides up and our contact information in the portal for the Live Well Advance. Are there any other questions or concerns or?
As we're gathering the questions, I did want to kind of do a little bit of thanks and name drop some of the partners that we have. We talked about ACEs, but we have the very fortunate of working with Miss Dana Brown. She is absolutely tremendously fantastic in helping us. We have outside partners at the Housing Commission, Tanisa Cartwright. Like it's just it's an incredible how San Diego is this big place with all of these entities. But again, I really do want to reiterate, use your partners because they have the same kind of deliverables that you do. And when you can work with people that you have this right mindset with, even if you don't, and you just they do a service, you do a service, and then everybody kind of like can piggyback on that. That's what makes these things add the most value. So don't be afraid to reach out and to kind of share some of the glory that you're going to get, because you are going to help people significantly, and there's enough of that to go around.
Andre, shout out. Thank you for the shout out to Dana Brown. We second that. Any other questions or concerns?
Were we that thorough? No questions. Okay. You guys are everybody's getting ready to start a program like tomorrow, right? Like, well, invite us. We want to see how that works. This is fantastic.
And overall, just to sum it up, create a structure, a structure that you're able to work with. If that's once a week, if that's twice a week, whatever the time is. Identify the topics that you think are important. And then once you've identified the topics that are important, look at your network and see who within that network can deliver, informative knowledge and career expertise on that. On that. So if you follow that by embedding work readiness around it, you're good to go, because within these sessions, the youth are being asked questions. They're doing activities together. They have to come back and present, whether it's public speaking or, what they learned from the last session, or have questions ready to go for whoever is going to be our next guest speaker. So all of these things is the learning point, right? It's the career development. It's that tangible, practice of skills, so that by the time they're done, they went from being very shy, not wanting to speak up, not knowing how to, really ask those informative questions, to being very proud that they're able to. So you really want to embed as much practice as possible into the pathway design.
Yeah, in your agency, as Caroline talks about the structure and the infrastructure of it, you absolutely have to have people that believe in what you're doing as you're creating it. We have the absolute luxury and the fantastic view of our president and CEO, Christy Buckley, who allows us to be able to kind of take the reins on a lot of things. And I'm very proud to be a part of Access's leadership team, and especially being able to work alongside with her.
All right. So our contact information is now, you should be able to see it. Um,
Yeah, and please, if you guys want to email us questions, that's probably going to be the fastest way to get the answers. And hopefully, we've been able to give you kind of a comprehensive, just an overview of that the how-tos of it. Don't be afraid of the work. And Caroline, she's not going to say it, but I will say it. She's very instrumental in making a lot of these things happen. And Myra's not going to say it either, but she's kind of the brains behind the bronze, so to speak, of it all, to make sure that we all are, that the deliverables that we are making are all not only helping the young people that we're working with, but they're keeping us contractually fit, because all of the things that we're talking about can fit. And all of you that work in different programs, you guys know how this works, right? We all have this dream list of things that we want to do. And then there's the constructs of what we have to deliver to our funders and what we have to deliver to keep everything, keep the lights on, so to speak. And you need to have people that are not afraid to tell you no, and they're not afraid to step in and say, I'll do this. And I'm very, very proud to say that Caroline and Myra have done that, and I know that all of you that are on the line, you have members of your staff that are that. And if you're in a leadership position, um, don't be afraid to push people, right? To make it, because you never know how a person can grow. We're in the business of helping all of our clients and all of that, but also the people that are within there. I mean, everybody got these type of career choices for a reason, to help. So this is the kind of thing that you want to be able to give to people, to have them be a part of it. And that way, not only do you get to share in the successes in the end, but everybody gets to grow.
right. We have another question. So, could we share how have we been able to maintain the personal connection and relationships through virtual workshops? Um, Great question. So, um, when when we transitioned to virtual, the first thing that we decided to do was host something that we called share safe space with Access. And we realized that a lot of our youth were, they were experiencing so many emotions, but they did not have a safe space to talk about what was going on with the pandemic, whether they're safe at home, all of these different things that were coming up. So we started off by just hosting a shared safe space once a month. The first one, not so many people came, but over time, we've been able to gather a pretty consistent and robust group of youth who just want to come together and just spend time with each other. The other thing is that we really are mindful about what kind of energy we put out virtually. So we don't let this computer screen get in the way of our silliness, our bright
No.
colors, our, funny jokes, corny jokes, all the things. And so we really try to translate that as much as possible virtually. And we found that to be successful. Our share safe spaces, we've partnered with different people. So at first it was just with Access. Then we did one with the district attorney's office. We've done one with our law program to talk about healthy relationships. And so we've been able to have them, focused on different topics that are important right now. And our youth have been able to kind of gravitate. Our second thing that we initiated was an access study hall. So we were finding that a lot of our youth were not showing up to school virtually. They were not getting, they were struggling to get work done. Even our staff who are in grad school, everyone's struggling. So we decided to do an access study hall that happens once a month. And so within that study hall, we talk about what challenges we're having with education right now, and then we give tips. So our first one was studying during extreme stress. How do you study during extreme stress? And so that's the conversation that we had. The next one was surviving college. A lot of our youth were having issues with, should I even apply right now since everything is shut down? And so we had a conversation about that. So what we do is we just get feedback from our case managers and our youth about what challenges they're experiencing. And then we take that particular topic and we make it into a virtual space. And we invite our youth to join us in talking about it however they see fit without judgment. So those are some examples.
And don't sleep on pre relationships and everything that Caroline is talking about. Your willingness to put yourself out there and to not have ego today is going to make one of your clients want to join one of your sessions 10 months from now, believe it or not. I absolutely had a young person that was joining one of our workshops. I don't even remember what the workshop was, and the workshop's not important. The question that they asked was Caroline going to be there? And when the answer to that was yes, they were in. Now what we know is, right, it's that old saying, if you stay in the barbershop long enough, you're going to get your hair cut. So if you continue to want to grow and your reasoning is not necessarily I want to be in the mental health field, I want to be in the customer service field, but if you want to be engaged with a person who you have that relationship with and they just happen to do this, that's how you're going to create that following. And believe it or not, that young person or that person, that adult, they're they're going to follow through with that because that's what they gravitate to and that's what they like. They don't even know it yet, right? Like we give people exposure to all of these things, and we don't know what's going to happen 10 years from now, but we do know what's happening right now is that they're getting a certain amount of a level of education. They're getting exposure to these different fields, and they're seeing these tangible things that they can do. So your relationship building is going to be key to creating a great pathway.
Right. We have 2 minutes. I'll give one more example because these are things that you can duplicate within your agency.
Hmm.
Is we have our East team did a cooking class and they attached the cooking class to a food handler certificate. So how do we do that virtually? We put together little baskets of ingredients for a recipe. We dropped it off at the doors of the youth that were participating. We all got on Zoom and we did a cooking class together, where we made that recipe together.
Shout
Once
out
they
to
were
Anel.
with it, yeah, shout out to no. Once they were finished with it, then we walked our youth through the food handler certificate, course, and so they were all able to complete that, and then get that certificate to add to their resume. So I give that example to just show you how creative you have
Hmm.
to be in order to, get these certifications out there into the community, but also engage our youth and have fun and build a relationship at the same time. So you can't see them as separate things, which is what we often tend to do. What you have to do is bring them all together and figure out how can we, more bang for your buck? How can we, do it all at once so that the impact is greater? Um, so yeah, thank you. Without further ado, I don't see any more questions, and we Any other comments, Myra or Rashawn, before we
Now,
end our time together?
just a special thanks to all of everyone that's on the panel, everyone that's in the room. Thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully our content will help you. And yes, thank you for asking for our contact information. Please reach out if there's anything that we personally or Access can do to try to help further anything that you're working on. You know, that would be great. We're here to serve. So thank you very, very much.
Awesome.
Yeah, I also would like to say just thank you for joining. Like Rashawn said, if you have any questions, please reach out. And we really hope that this session was very helpful to you.